So for tonight's reading, I thought it was about time that I did some maths with you all. So I'm reading from the book Why Do Buses Come in Threes? The Hidden Mathematics of Everyday Life by Rob Eastaway and Jeremy Wyndham. And the extract I'm going to read to you is Why Am I Always Stuck in Traffic Jams? John lives at number 10 King Street. A creature of habit, he leaves for work at 7:30 a.m. on the dot every morning. Within a few minutes, either way, arrives at the office of United Bottle Washers in the city centre for 8 a.m. John's neighbour Brian also works for United Bottle Washers, but he always leaves for work a bit later. What with feeding the cat, leaving a note for the milkman, ironing the shirt he forgot to do the night before, he often gets in his car at about 7:40 a.m. and arrives at the office at about 8:30 a.m, by which time John is writing his fourth memo. John and Brian take the same route. They have identical cars and have exactly the same driving habits, the same top speed, the same acceleration, etc. Yet Brian's journey takes him 20 minutes longer. How can this be? Well, you would of course realise that this is not a trick question, but an example of a daily reality. Many car commuters will recognise the problem of, well, if I get out of the house 5 minutes late, it usually costs me half an hour. But why does this happen? It is something to do with traffic build-up, of course. But what has it got to do with maths? The answer is that traffic belongs to a delightful part of mathematics known as queuing theory. Now, queues cause enormous headaches for traffic planners. It isn't just traffic lights that cause them. Any constraint to the free flow of cars could lead to a queue, a roundabout, an accident or roadworks, for just 3 examples. One less obvious cause of a queue is a car slowing down again or stopping temporarily in traffic before it drives off. You may have experienced this yourself. You're driving at 70 miles an hour down the motorway when suddenly the traffic ahead slows down and you pull to a halt, cursing at the prospect of some roadworks or an accident ahead. But after about 5 minutes of stop-start, the cars in front pull away and suddenly you're back up to 70 miles an hour. There's no sign of any accident or blockage. It's almost as if there was a phantom crash. In fact, what has happened is that the motorway has reached saturation point. The sheer quantity of cars has messed up the spacing that we all like to have between ourselves and the cars in front of us to make us feel safe. If for some reason the car in front slows down and you are close behind it, then you slow down too. When the car in front speeds up again, it takes a moment for you to react to this, so for an instant the space between the cars gets wider. However, the car behind you is still travelling at your slower speed, and if the car behind him was quite close too, he has had to brake. Picture in your mind a shockwave of decelerating cars passing along the motorway. If you like, imagine you're holding one end of a big spring. If you shake the spring, you'll see the pulse of compressed coils travel along the length of the spring, and this is what's happening to the cars. The speed at which this pulse travels can affect whether the traffic grinds to a halt or sorts itself out. Now here are a few quirky queuing facts. On a typical November day, there are around 518,000 cars stopped on a traffic jam on the M25 motorway. 29 man-years are spent waiting in M25 jams on every day like this. The longest queue on this motorways had been over 20 miles long. Queues used to be such an important part of life in Russia that if a Russian saw a queue, he would immediately join it and only then ask what it was for. And queuing is the only English word with 5 consecutive vowels. Now at the beginning of this section, we considered the situation of Brian, discovering that if he leaves for work at 7:30, his journey time is 30 minutes, but if he leaves home 10 minutes later at 7:40, his journey time is 50 minutes. Brian has been thinking about this. He has discovered that if he leaves home not 10 minutes later, but an hour later, at 8:30, his journey time is only 20 minutes. So it's possible that the later you leave, the less time it takes to reach the destination. Does this mean, wonders Brian, that it might be possible to find a time in the morning when leaving a minute later could lead to him cutting the journey time so much that he actually arrives a minute earlier? This is the crazy commuter's dream and has very little to do with maths.